Hello, everyone. Welcome to Escaping the Chains podcast. I'm your host, John Humphreys. We're excited to have you with us here today. We have our friend, Sam Helser. He's with Fort Wayne Recovery and Bare Knuckle
Recovery, Allendale Treatment.
Bare Knuckle Recovery, Allendale Treatment. And we'll get into some of the stuff they do because it's actually a really good community resource. But we're happy to have you here. We hope that you had a good time with the family over the weekend, and we hope you did some service work and reached out to some people that may have just needed somebody to talk to or a meal. Always make a plate for your neighbor. I'm talking to my neighbors when I say that. So, if you haven't had a chance yet, you could do us a huge, huge favor and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Escaping the Chains Podcast. Follow us on Apple Podcasts. It's a little purple microphone-looking thing on your apps. And if you do that, give us a review, hopefully a good one, but that stuff really helps us out. And on Spotify, you can follow us, you can give us a review, and you can comment on these podcasts. And all of that stuff really helps. First off, gives us feedback, so we kind of know if we need to make some adjustments or not, but also it gives us some momentum. And with that's something we could really use moving forward as we start to work on, upgrading equipment and things like that. We have Delivered Media recording, doing all of our recording and editing, and that is our friend RJ. We talk about him. He's kind of behind the curtain, but we can see him. So he's not actually behind a curtain when I say that. So he is visible. But we're very grateful for him. Everything you see visually and everything you hear from the audio is coming from Delivered Media, and we would not be here without them. So without any further ado, Sam Helser, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm blessed. So me and Sam we talk on a regular basis. He's a good friend of mine. Remy, so my oldest daughter just turned 18. Mm-hmm. That's been a process.
Happy birthday, Remy.
Happy birthday, Remy. I love you so much. But that's been a process.
Yeah.
18.
Yeah.
You don't realize it. Everybody's like, hey, how do you feel about it? And then that morning I was getting ready. I had an earlier morning for me than I'm used to because they were doing the Veterans Court graduation here in Grant County, which is an amazing program. They help veterans, it's similar to a reentry or drug court, but that was a cool experience. Got to go up to the courthouse here and see some people that I haven't seen in a long time, actually. Yeah. And, but I was getting ready that morning and I was going through my Facebook memories, and dude, I went the oldest Facebook memory I had on Remy's birthday was when she wasn't living with me, and I would get to see her maybe once a week. And I drove to Anderson where she was living, so it's about a 45-minute drive to McDonald's to meet her in the morning for breakfast and tell her happy birthday. And I took a picture, and that's what I posted. And as I was reading back through that, I started to get so emotional, dude. So emotional. Because just the stuff we've been through, and in that moment, I thought that was the fatherhood that I was going to be granted was, every other, that they actually let me take her and her sister, and sometimes their brother Eli, who I love so much, on Saturdays. And I would go on Wednesdays to take them to McDonald's. But just seeing, so first off, she was little, because that was 12 years ago. So she was 6. And it was, so I cried a little bit. And then I went into the Veterans Court thing, still a little teary-eyed because I didn't rebound from it real quick, and then just going through all of the memories, and that's a big thing.
Yeah, looking back on it, going from what we classify as like a parking lot dad, you get to see him in the parking lot, and you get to go to McDonald's, to where you're at now, and admiring the relationship that you're able to have with your daughters, and hoping that someday, because I have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, hoping that someday that those relationships will mimic what you have with Remy and Blaze. It's just seeing that is so awesome, and it's definitely something that as a community we like to see.
Yeah. And I think that's we don't get blueprints on that, you know what I mean? It's really being a girl dad is interesting.
It's hard work.
So yeah, and when with your age is like people see my daughters now, they make pretty good decisions. They don't cause me too much trouble. But when they were that age,
Yeah.
I would get a call. My Aunt Cindy, who passed away, would watch them which was one of my saving graces because I didn't have to. I was working at a factory, not making a ton of money, but I didn't have to pay for child care.
Yeah.
But every day, dude, when they were getting ready for school, my phone would start blowing up. Like they're going crazy. Like it's just there. If you knew what they were like then and now, like you would just be shocked because they were complete maniacs.
Shout out Cindy. Shout out my mom for watching our kids.
Oh gosh, it's such a huge help. And when people don't have that, I have a lot of like, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard paying for daycare or trying to find babysitters and stuff. It's because working with people at the factory that didn't have that help, it's like their lives were so much more tense. They were always having to figure something out, and if one of their kids got sick,
Forget about it.
yeah, they'd have to miss work.
You're constantly shuffling money around to figure out how to pay for daycare, and I consider myself blessed along with my wife that we have family members who are able to step in and help us raise our children, because really that's what they're doing, is helping us raise our children as we're, figuring life out,
Yeah.
because even as I sit here as a 31-year-old man, I'm still figuring life out, and some days I might not be the best dad, but my main goal is just try to show up and continue to show up. So
Yeah.
if I can do that, I'm doing okay.
Yeah, and I think for dads, like one of the things is like people, it's not the monetary stuff doesn't matter because we've always been, there's Christmas, we have family, you know what I mean? But there's been Christmases where we didn't have much. I remember Pastor Todd one time, I was broke, dude, and it was Christmas, and he gave me like 100. He was like, "Hey, how are you doing for Christmas?" I was like, "Yeah, honestly, just okay." And he gave me $100, and he's, how he is. RJ said nothing else about it, just kind of pushed me away, didn't let me fight him back or anything, but that meant so much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you didn't have anything, so last minute I got to, put some stuff together. But people a lot of times they, the monetary stuff, and that's good, you know what I mean? Look out for your kids and stuff like that, especially you guys. Like, you should not have brand new Jordans on and your kids' shoes are falling, unless it's their play shoes. But if y'all are out, you know what I mean? Make sure your kids are, on the same level as you.
Yeah.
But with my girls, I think the thing that, like, looking back is the consistency. Those girls know that I'm available whenever they need me.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like, I fall short at Christmas. Like, I'm just not the most, I like the stuff, but, I decorate last minute. I'm not good at putting birthday parties together, any of that stuff. But the things that we do, like we do. So, like Remy, every year I take her to Fort Wayne, to Glenbrook Mall. It used to be Blondie Got Cookie. Then we go Crumble Cookie. Target, we get something to eat. She usually gets Chick-fil-A or whatever down there, and we've always done that. Actually, last year was when I did the podcast up there with Bare Knuckle, and we had lunch with you, and which was really nice. But yeah, it's just, and so she knows on her birthday we're going for it. There's no, hey, are we?
Yeah.
She knows. And I think it's good for the, as you get into whether it's recovery or just being a dad that wasn't present for whatever reason, is like being available, but then give them the things like where they know. Like, I know my dad's going to show up.
Yeah.
When Blaze was in indoor soccer, I missed 2 games. One because I was sick and everybody was going. She had other family going, but she played that for 4 or 5 years. And she knew that I was going to show up. And of course, when you're working and stuff, you can't, show up to everything. But like, you want your kids to have confidence in the fact that you are going to be present and available.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to focus on is, in the scheme of things, kids don't care about, what they got for Christmas, what they got for their birthdays, where they ate at for their birthdays. It's showing up at those soccer practices that they care about. You post a few times about how Blaze goes to the gym with you, and I think that that's the coolest thing, because not only are you showing her, this is important to keep yourself healthy, but we can do it together. And I feel like there's a stigma about, well, you're supposed to take your son to the gym, you're supposed to make him tough, but you and Blaze's relationship and just sitting in that is awesome to see, because what other dads do you know that take their daughters to the gym just to work out, just to
Yeah.
spend some time with them, just to do something outside the realm of what that stigma is?
Yeah.
So,
She's tough, dude.
yeah,
Like, if once she decides she's doing something, she's like, okay, we're going to the gym.
yeah,
It's the winter time right now, basically here. And she's in shorts and a t-shirt, like, let's roll.
yeah,
And then we'll get down there, and I've been working out for a long time, you know what I mean? But I'm no spring chicken. And I'll be like, okay, I'm about done. She's like, one more set.
yeah.
You know,
We got 30
like,
minutes left,
yeah,
Dad.
one more set. And she's tough. She'll knock some of these boys out.
Yeah.
She's got some hands. She's worked on some boxing and stuff, but it's that stuff. Like bringing your kids into your life. Like, we live together, so we assume, but it's like bringing them into our life and showing them like the things that we do. And then, Remy doesn't really have an interest in working out. She likes to shop. She likes Starbucks. You know what? I like getting new hats.
Yeah.
And I enjoy, coffee, and that's kind of where we met.
Yeah.
That's where we meet, is
You-
doing those things.
You're able to show up in a way that matters to her.
And in her specific likes and wants and all of that stuff. And never discount the little rides to like the gas station and stuff, because I swear I've had some of the deepest conversations with those girls, like going to pick up food.
Yeah.
Just the two of us,
Yeah.
So, Sam, tell us a little bit about yourself now that we went on a tangent about birthdays and stuff. So when your daughters turn 18, it's going to be tough.
Well, they think they're 18 already. So.
They'll think that, you know what I mean?
We're in there.
So just tell me a little bit about yourself, because you're kind of in, we've talked a lot, and you're in recovery, sobriety, freedom, as we would like to call it, like God freed you from addiction. But you also have it's not unique in a sense when we're in this world, but unique to the podcast so far. You had mental health struggles too, correct? Yeah. So you just want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my mental health struggle started off young. I was adopted. I'm African American. The family that adopted me was Caucasian. So right off the rip, I always felt like, well, there's something wrong. I don't belong. I was either too white to be black or too black to be white. So, I went to public schools, never really fit in there. Went to private schools, never really fit in there. So, I became a master at molding myself to whoever you needed me to be in that moment. So I struggled with a lot of abandonment issues. I struggled with a lot of how does Sam look at himself? How does he view himself? So that quickly turned into depression, anxiety. What's this person thinking of me? How am I going to fit in here? And I felt that I could numb that, or I found out that I could numb that various different ways. So at first it was video games. I could shut my door, lock my door, be gone for hours, and not have to think about what's going on inside of my head, what's going on outside of that door. Food became an issue for me. Various other things became an issue for me. Then I found out that I can use people too. I can use people to get this feeling.
Yeah.
So I used people, and then that quickly became, well, substances can do the same thing, and they do it even better. My boss Nate always says that opiates specifically, they were meant to kill physical pain, but we quickly found out that they kill emotional pain quicker.
Dang, just hold on one second. Can you repeat that?
So opiates, they kill physical pain, but we quickly found out that they kill emotional pain more effectively. So, I was always a drinker, but I also dabbled in heroin, fentanyl, some of those things, and at the time I was really struggling with the way I looked at myself and the way I saw the outside world, really. But that's nothing that one pill can't fix, one shot of dope can't fix. And I chased that. I chased it and I chased it and I chased it. I've overdosed. There's actually a story of when I overdosed the first time, and my dad came in, and it was Easter, and I was so excited about, I had my own place. I was renting with my girlfriend at the time, and I was so excited to be able to show my family that I had finally made it. And finally made it means, we were renting a house that we were probably 3 months behind on. She had an open DCS case. I was wearing sweatshirts in 80-degree weather from all the track marks all over my arm. But we had made it.
Yeah.
We were doing good, right?
Right.
But my dad was on his way, and I overdosed before he got there. And he beat EMS there. He beat the cops there. Eventually, I got loaded up into the ambulance. And
Was he there when that happened? So when you were getting getting put in the ambulance, was he there?
Yes, yeah,
So he witnessed that too.
yeah. So eventually, they take me off, they cart me off, and my dad took it as a responsibility that he needed to kick the dope boy out because the dope boy was staying there with us at that time. I mean, we didn't have the kids there. Why not get free stuff in that process too? So that I found out that I couldn't do that anymore. Couldn't use opiates anymore. So my drinking picked back up, and again, that was to numb all of the mental health struggles that I had been dealing with, because I could drink and things would just go away.
I want to touch on that because it's the same. That there's some things like alcohol and weed, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, that we take to because we feel anxious, or we take because we're depressed, or we take because we want, a lot of country singers back in the day because their wife left them, or like you drink because of these things.
Yeah.
But the truth is, like, it makes all of the mental health stuff worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you're depressed and you get to drinking all the time, you're going to be.
Alcohol's a depressant.
Yeah, you're going to be more depressed. If you're anxious, you're going to be more anxious. And even some of the stronger weed, we heard Dr. Hoeksema one time do that presentation. I think you were there, but even with that stuff, it's like, I'll just smoke to take the edge off. But when you start to medicate, it makes you more anxious. It makes you more antisocial. It makes you, it can make you more depressed.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to touch on that because I feel like sometimes like we think that's the answer, and it's like once you get stuck in that, it's so hard to get out. But it's like the answer is actually like first you got to stop poisoning yourself and your mind, and then I'm sure you somehow got out of it. So we're about to find out.
Yeah, I mean, just doing the real work to free yourself. You talk about freedom, getting free from those things, because at the end of the day, whether it's food, whether it's video games, whether it's people, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's pornography, you're just trying to cover a bullet wound with a Band-Aid. And until you do the work to get that bullet wound sewn up, to take care of that trauma from the bullet wound, you're just going to keep putting Band-Aids on.
And the work's tough.
Yeah, the work is very tough.
Yeah, you got to look at it.
Yeah.
I've been in recovery a long time, and even now, I've had some friends reach out about working the steps and stuff, and it's like, gosh, I know these things are, I have character defects still, and I think it's good to be transparent about that stuff, but it's just like doing the work. I got to go back to the place where I got hurt. I have to acknowledge that I got hurt. That's tough for guys sometimes because I like to say it didn't hurt me and move on. And you say that 1,500 times over 20 years, you got a lot of scars.
That's what we're taught, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're taught is the only acceptable emotion that men can have is anger. So that's how it comes out. And if it's not anger, it's isolation, right? So if we're not showing to the outside world that we're tough and that we got this, we're running away. And where does that lead us?
Well, I mean, no place good.
Yeah.
Usually alone.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, even if you're surrounded by people, like you're alone.
Yeah.
You know.
The worst place to be as an addict or someone who's struggling with mental health is alone with yourself, by yourself, because then you're in the worst company.
Yeah. And and you'll enable yourself, like everything's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anything it takes to not feel, anything it takes to, you don't care about hurting people. And I'm not speaking about people that are in active use right now in a negative light, but for me, me by myself people are going to get hurt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just, if I'm using anything I've ever used, people are going to get hurt. Yeah. And so am I. I'm going to have more work to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's it like? So now you're back to alcohol. Where does life kind of go from there?
So previous to my run-ins with opiates, I had acquired 2 OWIs. And, I was able to convince myself because I was a young man, well, either it's the cops' fault because they pulled me over or everyone else does it because, I was 23 at the time. Everyone has at least one OWI, right? No, not everyone does. It's just the people I was spending time with, right?
Yeah.
So when I picked that alcohol back up after, my run-ins with other substances, so I realized probably not too far into my stint that I was forced to go to AA meetings because I was in court or I was in some sort of treatment classes. One of the things that stuck out to me that I wish I would have paid a little bit more attention to is it's not how much you drink that makes you an alcoholic. It's what happens to you when you do drink. When I drink, I make stupid decisions, like getting behind the wheel of a car. So once I picked that alcohol back up, I quickly acquired 4 more OWIs.
Jeez.
And at that point, I was looking at 12 and a half years in the Department of Corrections. Luckily, I had a decent attorney who was able to knock it down to a level 6, but I had to spend, 18 months in county jail for that level 6, and then eventually drug court.
Was that in Allen
which saved
County?
my life. No, that was in. So the 18 months was in Wayne County, which is Richmond, just west of Dayton, and then I was in drug court in Grant County.
Okay.
Yeah. So Grant County is kind of where my story changed because not only was I able to find God, but I was also able to find what vulnerability looked like. And I think that to find a path of recovery, you have to have both of those. You have to have some sort of higher power, and you have to have vulnerability. You have to have the ability to be vulnerable with the people that you surround yourself with.
Yeah. So you're in Grant County in drug court.
Yeah.
We were talking about Veterans Court earlier. It's a lot of the same. It's the same judge.
Yeah.
Mike Henson.
Mike Henson,
is
Mark
the
Spitzer.
probation officer, and Spitzer is the judge.
Yeah.
So similar programs, it's just a smaller scale.
Yeah.
So what was so you get out of jail, you get released basically to drug court is the next thing that.
Correct. So I was sitting in Huntington County, and at this point, I had surrendered my life to Jesus. Sitting in Huntington County, a guy came in and just started talking about it, and I was like, I had always kind of been pushed away from Jesus and God and anything that had to do with the Bible. I didn't want a piece of it because, as far as I knew, all of that stuff had let me down. But I sat in that cell, and for 6 hours, he just talked to me right out of his Bible.
6 hours.
Yeah, for 6 hours in the darkness, he just talked to me right out of his Bible. And eventually, I think I found salvation in that cell house. I gave my life over because that's what I was just supposed to do. That's what I was told I was supposed to do, and nothing that I had been doing had been working, right? So I'm going to trust this guy because he's in jail. Yes, he's got all of these other things going on, but he's happy, and he knows that someone loves him, and that person is Jesus Christ, right? So I woke up that next morning and I felt free. I didn't care if I had to spend the next 12 and a half years in the Department of Corrections. I mean, I cared, obviously.
You didn't want to.
Yeah, but I was at peace with it. I was at peace with my mom knowing that even though I was incarcerated, I was still safe because she knew where I was at. She knew that I was safe. I was at peace with all the trauma that I had been through as a child. For the first time in my life, I was at peace. And I knew that there had been that switch in my life.
Yeah.
So that's when I just wanted to pursue more of that. How can I get more of that? How can I chase more of that?
Yeah.
So at that time, it was a really good time for me to come into drug court because with some discussion with my attorney, after I had left Huntington County, I got switched directly over to Grant County supervision. And that's when I was accepted into drug court under Reggie Lipscomb.
Reggie.
Yeah, good old Reggie.
We love Reggie, yeah.
So I was doing that song and dance. I was still a little hesitant to open up to people. But then someone told me, look at the 5 people that you surround yourself with. That's eventually who you're going to become. So then, I decided I'm going to choose my 5 people very carefully.
Yeah.
Very selective about who I let in my circle. Luckily, at the time I was at the Grace House, which is a sober living house here in Marion, and I was surrounded by some excellent men of God, Daniel Baker, Andrew Norris, Andrew Martin, a couple others, and I was able to form a group around those people.
They were all at the house at the same time.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people doing amazing things now, too. That's wild, dude.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I built my foundation. Jesus and then men of God. And as long as I kept those things around me, how am I going to break? You know? And then I had the accountability from the core, which never hurts either.
Yeah. They don't play.
Yeah.
Reggie's accountability is different, too, because he'll sit there and let you walk yourself right into a mess, won't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he will.
Yeah, but he'll also know that he loves you enough to help you get out of it.
Yeah, every time. He's good counsel, man. I sit in, not so much anymore, but when I worked with Grant County Drug Court and stuff, I'd stop down there and just sit at his desk for 5 minutes, and you just leave like, okay, I'm smart, I'm wiser now.
Yeah.
Just spending some time with him.
Yeah.
So you're at the Grace House, and that's now called the
Radiant House.
The Radiant House. So it's the same thing as the Radiant House. Surrounding yourself by people. So what's next? What did you stay out of trouble?
Reggie might argue with that. So I was in drug court. I was trying to go sanction free the whole time, but I did get one sanction for actually coming to Bethel on an overnight for the New Year's Eve party. And I didn't ask for permission, but that's my fault. And I needed to be held accountable on that. But I eventually, got through drug court, did that whole process, graduated, and directly after that, I started working for Radiant Health and Core, doing peer support for Marion General, Radiant
Hospital,
Health,
Marion General Hospital.
Yep, sober livings.
Yeah.
Doing that whole thing, and that's kind of where I found my passion.
Yeah.
I can help others, and it makes me feel good about myself.
Yeah.
I can show up. What's that? Because when we're in addiction, we forget how to show up for people.
Oh, man, we show up for ourselves.
Yeah.
We show up for the dope man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we show up for the lick. RJ, he got all the way through the drug court. He got in trouble one time, and it was for going to a New Year's Eve party at a church.
It was past curfew, though. So
Past curfew, but wild, isn't it?
yeah.
That's actually the building we're in right now is where they have those. So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool, man.
Yeah.
So you got through all that. Now you were working for Core Radiant Health. We all know Core. I still work for them.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean. I've been with them. This is my second time, and it's just basically a community opioid response endeavor is what it's called.
Yeah.
And we're kind of available to the community depending on depending on what your niche is in all of that. And so sometimes you'll do hospital responses if somebody hits on the scale or if they got Narcan.
Yep.
That's intense, isn't it?
Yeah, it's extremely intense.
I got called some stuff one time, several times, but I went in and there was a guy, and he had been drinking, and I walked in, and he was like, "What are you doing here?" We didn't know each other. And I was like, "Well, I'm here to talk to you about like some options, to not be in this situation again." And he just, I don't know if he saw my tattoos. I don't know what shirt I was wearing, but he was like, "You Lord-loving MFers, I can't stand y'all." And I'm like, "Dude, I didn't even say anything about Jesus yet."
Yeah.
I'm about to.
Yeah.
But we ended up having a good conversation. You have to have really thick skin when you're walking into those environments, don't you? Because you have no idea. Like if somebody's tweaking, they're going to be bouncing all around. It's a very intense. It can be very intense. Most of the time, it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But gosh, you get some calls, and you're really calm in the moment, or I was, and then you get in the parking lot and feel like puking. Like that was a lot, you know.
Yeah. You can have your whole life dumped on you or their whole life dumped on you in a matter of 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But it all comes down to how can I show up for you in this moment? We might not know each other. We might not have known each other 5 minutes ago, and we might not know each other in 5 hours, but how can I show up for you now?
Yeah.
and what can we do to make this situation better.
Yeah.
Usually they let their guard down when they find out that you've been there. You know, a lot of times we've been in those hospital beds dealing with the same exact thing. So once they find that out, you know, they usually let their guard down.
Yeah. Which is nice when they let their guard down, because when
Yeah.
their guard's up, it's tough.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you just get some people like, I don't want to talk to you.
Yep.
It's all right. Have a good evening. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Maybe next time.
Yeah, because there will be a next time.
Yeah. If you don't, yeah, we already know that.
Yeah.
So you're working with Core and Radiant. How did you end up with Allendale, Fort Wayne Recovery, Bare Knuckle Recovery?
So I was actually working as a tech at Allendale, which is a behavioral health tech. So what they do is operations level stuff.
Were you ever, when you were in your active substance use or misuse or whatever they want to call it, did you have any interaction with them?
So I was actually a client of Fort Wayne Recovery back in 2019, and this was in between my maybe second and third OWI. And at that point, I had actually met one of the techs there, and his name was Nate Mollering. We call him Big Nate at the time, and at that time I thought he was goofy. You know, he was just preaching about recovery. This guy's 300 pounds of solid muscle,
Yeah.
biggest shoulders I've ever seen. Like, what do you have to offer me? You're driving the van so that I can go to treatment, right? Fast forward 4 years, Nate is my boss. You know, he's asked me to come back to Allendale to work as community outreach. He just got promoted to the CEO of company and the vice president of Allendale.
That dude used to be a tech,
Yeah,
and he's the CEO now.
yeah, yeah,
We love Nate.
Yeah.
We love Nate around here. He's a good sounding board for a lot of things that, like, I'm doing personally, but I've had really good conversations, and he's such an encouraging person.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Sometimes I just go up there to meet with him, just, and I told him, I was like, dude, it's just encouraging to, and he just shoots out ideas. You know, he's like, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Just, try this, work on this.
and he's got the nicest way of telling you the truth.
Yeah.
You know, even if you don't want to hear it, he'll tell it to you, but it'll be the kindest way he knows how.
It's kind of like, okay, it's okay that you suck.
Yeah.
You got to work better.
Yeah.
You work harder.
Let's
do you-
find something that you don't suck at.
Do you remember before you worked with them and you were like, hey, they want to meet you, and we went up there to meet him at one of the restaurants, and it was an expensive restaurant. And do you remember our interaction, like trying to figure out who was paying for what?
Yeah, yeah.
RJ, we were going to this restaurant, and he was like, I think they're going to pay. And we're communicating back and forth, like texting. And I get to Fort Wayne. He was like, dude, I hope they're going to pay, because he started sending me the menu prices. And I was like, well, they paid.
Yeah, I forgot my wallet too. So
Did you? We met Zach. I met Zach and Nate that day.
Yeah.
Really cool guys.
yeah,
Really cool.
good team. Really good
Yeah.
team that I work with.
Yeah, and shoot, Nate. So Nate went from being a tech. I mean, we're going to have him on sometime, but
Yeah.
he's been on Fox and everything else now. So you did go through you went through there,
Yes.
and then and Nate was a tech.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't take that program seriously at the time I was in it, just because I was doing it for the courts, I was doing it for my parents, whoever I could do it for to get them off my back, and as soon as I'm pretty sure the night that I graduated Fort Wayne Recovery, I went back to drinking. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then maybe 2 weeks later, I got an OWI. So Nate was a tech at that time, and he would try to give me this advice or this mentorship, but I just wasn't having it.
Yeah.
But then I quickly found out that Nate, whatever he's doing, he does it to 100%.
Yeah.
And in the role that he was in, he was doing it to 100%, and eventually that led him to where he is now.
Yeah. He was probably a dope tech then.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine. So that now you're working back with him.
Yeah.
What do you do?
So the easy explanation is I do two things, right? My job is to connect people to other people, and anyone who is seeking treatment for substance use or mental health, my job is to find treatment for them, regardless of any barriers that may be in the way, insurance, living conditions, offender status, anything, I help them find treatment or sober living, AA meetings, anything regarding recovery.
And people can connect with them on Facebook. So if somebody sends them a message on Facebook, how's that work?
So if someone sends a message to Bare Knuckle Recovery on Facebook, it'll either go to myself or Bob. And Bob's been on the podcast before, but it'll either go to myself or Bob, and then we'll answer it, get you the resources you need, and hopefully get you feeling better.
So that's a resource if you're listening, Bare Knuckle Recovery. You can send them messages, and they will get you set up with help.
Yeah.
Do you guys do interventions?
So yes, that is one big part of our job, and it's probably my favorite part of the job.
Really?
Is we go into typically people's houses, we sit them down and we tell them, this is how you're going to change your life, and if you don't change your life, this is what's going to happen. And oftentimes they choose the life-changing route.
So, and people ask about interventions a lot. So, if they send you a message on Facebook, they might be able to get that arranged.
Yep, absolutely.
So, if you're listening, that's Bare Knuckle Recovery. It's on Facebook. But yeah, check them out and go follow or like the page just in case. You may not need it now, but you never know.
Yeah.
And that's a amazing resource.
And another thing that we really, so Bare Knuckle was founded because parents kept seeing that their children were dying of fentanyl intoxication, and nobody knew what that was back in 2019, 2020. And people kept sending these messages to my boss Tommy and then Nate, who we just got done talking about, saying my child died of fentanyl intoxication. What is that? And Nate and Tommy were telling person after person after person, and eventually they said, well, let's just make a video explaining what this is, what fentanyl is, what to look for, how you can avoid it, and that video blew up. So now one of their goals is to make these podcast episodes just educating communities, parents, and users about the dangers of what you're going through, how to build boundaries, and how to get yourself out of it or get your loved one out of it if they're going through it.
Yeah, and they have it's the Bare Knuckle Recovery podcast.
Yeah.
And it's when we talk on here, we focus a lot on the testimony and God and things like that.
Yeah.
That podcast has a lot of good information.
Yeah.
That they I remember listening to the one where they got to just chopping it up about enabling.
Yeah.
And that's really important. So if you know somebody that's struggling, it'd be good to go check a couple of podcasts out over there because they do kind of give you information, tools, and insight.
I may be biased, but my favorite podcast episode is the one that you're on.
Well, I appreciate that.
I love the youth.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And see, that's the thing is like, so all of us have kind of intertwined over this passion, especially it's been heightened with fentanyl because we've lost people. Yeah. And Cody and I will talk to the youth. I think we've got school coming up, but so do you guys, you know what I mean? And so does Bare Knuckle, and we, similar angles, but a little bit different. Sometimes we try to go at it with faith-based, and we, but and when we go after the youth, but like we all hate it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? These are all people, I only know most of them through you.
Yeah.
Or through Facebook, but like we have bonded and created relationships over our hatred of fentanyl and what it's cost us.
Yeah, buried 3 people in the last 2 weeks.
And some people will say it's lightening up, but it's not. It's the thing is like when it's just people are actually using it intentionally now.
Yep.
Now I used to use fentanyl when I was using, but it was the patches. So people are like, oh, it's not the same. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those are very strong too, but it was it's not the same stuff. You know what I'm saying?
And I might get checked on these facts or stats because I'm not 100% sure, but yes, our overdose levels in the state of Indiana have gone down. The percentage has gone down, but our youth percentages, I believe, have quadrupled in the last couple of years. So our youth are overdosing at a higher rate than anything or any time in the past. So that's something that we really need to hone in on and work with because our youth are dying, our children are dying. This drug is killing them. It's not overdosing because typically an overdose is on purpose. This is murder.
Or if you know, an overdose is if you knew what you were doing.
Yes.
Yeah, and they call this fentanyl poisoning, which is when we had Sheriff Del Garcia on, talking about like how they're starting to charge people, and he was
Yeah.
like, we try to prove it, it's harder to prove, but if you sell somebody something knowing there was fentanyl in it,
Yeah.
and something, and they overdose or something, like, your charges change an awful lot.
It's a level 1 felony. It's on that same level as murder.
Yeah. And that's what we're up against.
Yeah.
So, we could probably do a lot of different things with our lives, but this is still, front and center. It's hard to get off the front lines when there's still arrows getting shot and there's still sword swinging. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's hard to fall back and not use your voice and not use your time when you come from that world, and when you've seen families crying at caskets, and just the impact that it has. It doesn't. We're about this. You get what I'm saying? Yeah.
If you're not all in, get out of our way.
Yeah. You can't be halfway. The thing is like, you can do it part time, but like you have to do it with your whole heart, even when you're tired. There's times I want to give up, and there's times that I want to take breaks, and it's just like, but there's something else that's driving me. First off, it's God has stamped me with this, for now at least, with this calling on my life. So I have to, and I get my strength through Him, and I get my grace through Him. But there's times where something happens, and you're like, I don't know, I don't want to do this anymore. That was bad.
Yeah, and grace is tough because we're human. We're not God.
Yeah.
So some days we show up to work and we don't have that grace.
Yeah.
And it's tough looking at this 20-year-old kid knowing that he's probably going to die, and him not wanting to change his life, you knowing the end road, and you just having to move on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though you want the grace to be there, it's just we have to pull another one out of the fire.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
is tough. The showing grace. Some days it's easy.
Yeah.
And other days it's like, why can't you just figure it out? And I know it took a lot of grace for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I try to remember that, but it is it's very challenging.
Yeah.
What's the most rewarding thing about your work now?
Seeing that light bulb flick on in someone's eyes when they finally get it.
Yeah.
And then, very close to that would be, so my niche is kind of working with the families. That's what I really like to do, is work with the families. When a mom finally knows that she can get a peaceful rest at night, whether their kid is saying yes to going to treatment or they've been clean for 6 months, a year, and they finally see that click happen, that would probably be one of the most rewarding things for me.
Yeah, people don't understand the trauma that families go through when somebody they love is out on the streets.
Yeah.
They have no idea.
Yeah, they're living it with them.
I don't have any idea other than what people have communicated to me, but you can't sleep. Every time your phone goes off, you think this might be the call.
Yeah.
Like, it is hell.
Yeah.
Absolute hell. It has to be. And that's another thing that keeps you going. You got families getting a hold of you like, hey, can you help? And it's like, well, they got to want help, but
there's ways we can push them towards the help, but
right.
At the end of the day, you can't get into EDO for someone using fentanyl, which I think that the state of Indiana needs to change. But
would explain to everybody what an EDO is.
So, emergency detention order. Mm-hmm. If I say, I'm having thoughts of harming myself or harming others, the police can come out to the house. They can place me on an emergency detention order, so I go to a psychiatric facility for 72 hours, or at least go get evaluated to see if I meet criteria. You can't do that with someone who is using fentanyl, even though they know that they are a danger to themselves or potentially somebody else. Even with methamphetamine, definitely a danger to somebody else. You cannot have them EDO'd in the state of Indiana for that alone.
Is there other states where you can?
So actually, I just found out about Casey's Law. It's a new thing coming out, and Kentucky has it, to where if you believe that a family member is using, you can have them tested via their primary care physician and another physician, and if they make the determination that this person needs treatment, there will be a court order signed, and this person has got to go to treatment, or they'll be remanded into custody.
Oh man.
So yeah, I think I'm a big proponent of sometimes custody is needed for people to pull their heads out and get on the right path. I mean, that was my story. I needed custody because sometimes we don't get that chance to live out on the streets. Custody saves a lot of people's lives.
And people can say, "Oh, freedom and stuff," but like when you work where we work,
Yeah.
and when you do what we do, sometimes it's like they got to go. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm watching somebody die.
Yeah.
I'm literally watching somebody die. I'm watching. They're one decision away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're making the bad ones.
They've
You know what I
already
mean?
spiritually died.
Yeah, and it's like so. And I've seen people I have heard over and over again. I was so mad when I had to go to jail for that week, even a weekend sometimes.
Yeah.
So we can get treatment figured out, and then they're like, man, you know, they graduate the program. It was like the turning point. And they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, that I needed that to like mentally reset and figure out what I wanted. And
Thank you for sending me to jail.
yeah, which
Judge
is the weird,
Newton in Huntington, thank you for sending me to jail.
such a strange thing you don't hear people say. But RJ, we've heard it a couple times, haven't we? We've heard it more than once that jail or prison saves somebody's life.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ideal.
No.
You know what I mean? You shouldn't like set out and be like, you know what, I want to go to jail to get
No.
saved. But
Not
you
the
know,
first option.
not the first option, but you know, that's sometimes what it takes.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times we've heard it on here, but it's been several. So you enjoy working with people. You guys connect with people, which is cool too. Let's see. Oh yeah, I'm gonna dig into some questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Ask away.
So if you could break bread with one person from the Bible, and you can't say Jesus, you can't say God. I mean, we break bread with them, you know what I mean? But no Jesus, no God. Who is the person that you would sit down and have dinner with in the Bible?
Probably David, because me personally, I have a lot of Goliaths in my life.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I go into those battles fearful. And for him to have the faith that he had that, oh, well, God's got me. You know, me being human, I don't have that. I don't have that faith a lot of the times. But for him just God's got me. You know, I would ask him, how did you have that level of faith? What's standing behind you? Obviously God, but how do you get there?
Yeah.
Because some days I just can't get there with my faith.
I always wonder with him. I feel like with David, it was all of the times because he was so forgotten.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just left to herd sheep. And he had the battle, you know, with what all was it? A lion, a bear, and something else. Something else. But he had to protect the sheep. And in those battles, he was outmanned too. And I think he just kind of was, you know, he was kind of learning like, okay, me, God, and this slingshot can handle hard things.
Yeah.
And I love the story of David. And I'm guessing that's going to be probably a common answer just because of all the levels of his life and so much was covered. But I think that I feel stronger the more time that I'm just out there with my slingshot and God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Out in the wilderness.
Yeah. My friend Nathan Harmon always says, minutes with men, hours with God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And yeah, and to get to that place of like, when I have time, and I do this sometimes, and sometimes I could do better, but instead of listening to the radio or anything like that, I'm going to cut it off when I'm driving to Wabash to work, and I'm just going to talk to God. You know,
It's the best suit of armor you can have.
and those are the best days I have.
Yeah.
I don't want to say like they go perfect. I don't confuse it with like I stay blessed and money starts raining. It's not that. It's just that I find myself being so much more prepared
And centered.
and there's more joy. You know, when I walk into a situation, I'm more grateful instead of saying, "Oh, I got to do this, this, and this today." It's like I get to, you know what I mean? I get like, God, we're gonna, I'm doing this. We're doing this today. And it's something that I want. I wish I did more of, but I know when I do it, it's just so good for me.
Yeah.
You know.
What's that gratitude look like when you don't take that time?
Oh gosh, dude. All of a sudden, and I think it was Todd told me one time, but he was like, "You show me the strongest Christian in the world, and you take them out of their Bible and take them out of prayer in 2 weeks, they're probably going to be a bad person."
Yeah.
And so when I'm not doing that, I'm quicker to snap probably, but more than that, my brain starts to get anxious, and I start to think that I got to control and micromanage everything, and that's overwhelming. For somebody whose brain operates like mine, it's like I'll feel it. And there's been a couple of times, like I've had to apologize. I think it was about a year ago, but I got a hold of Cody because we do the speaking stuff, and I had to apologize. She's like, "Dude, I've probably been tough to work with," but I had stopped praying so much, and I had stopped reading my Bible. And before you know it, like you're kind of snappish, you're trying to control everything.
Yeah.
You want to manage these thoughts in your head, but there's too many, so you're just kind of frantic. I don't know how else to put it. You have trouble sleeping. That's how it affects me.
Yeah.
And I'm saved. And I love Jesus, and I listen to, praise and worship music and all of that stuff. But if I'm not in my word and prayer, and when we talk about prayer for me, everybody's different, but just like those conversations with God, like, hey, what do you want me to do? Bring me peace in these areas. What do I have to do to obtain peace in those areas? Like, what direction do you want me to go?
Yeah.
And when I'm not doing that, I'm probably, I have a little bit of rope, but eventually, like, I'm just not going to be fun to be around. And I won't want to be around myself.
Yeah.
That's another thing is like, if I don't want to be by myself because I can't, stand who I am, because of the decisions I'm making and stuff like that, that's always been something that, I think I've battled anyway. Like I have to talk to God when I'm alone, because if I don't, I start beating myself up for everything I've ever done.
Start talking to yourself, being your own worst critic.
Oh, you did this and that. A lot of people talk about the voice of the enemy.
Yeah.
Shoot, RJ, it's my own voice. It's
Yeah.
my flesh. Like, you suck, dude. You did all of these things, And so, and if you're listening, that's one of those things. Like, that's a big thing that sometimes doesn't get preached a lot. But you, like when you're alone with yourself, a lot of us don't like ourselves. And one of the ways to at least combat that to begin with is know what God said about you from the Bible, because you can speak that stuff over yourself and over again. But fill that time with, connecting with God, because I'll tell you, I can't beat myself up and be in a conversation with God. Because repentance is moving away. That's a different act than condemnation and conviction. And I think me and RJ have had conversations about this. We need to just start recording them, but like off the record of like the difference between condemnation and conviction. Holy Spirit convicts.
Yeah.
Your flesh, the enemy, the world condemns. So and so if you're listening. It can be hard. It's still hard for me sometimes to just sit by myself.
Yeah. But, long story short, the enemy can't speak to you if you're speaking to God at the same time.
That's 100% accurate.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people too. If I'm praising God, it's hard to get attacked.
Yeah.
If I'm in a place of praise, it's about the safest place I can be.
But don't get that twisted as when you're doing well, you're not going to be attacked.
Oh gosh, no.
Because that's when you're going to be attacked the most, is when you're doing the right thing.
And you'll get attacked sneaky.
Yeah.
You'll find yourself starting to take credit for what God's doing. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, look at life, and just not being aware of the things that you've stumbled over before. Sometimes,
Yeah. He's going to attack you through your family, through your friends, if he can't get to you.
Yep. Oh, that's good. Eating with David, and David probably. I mean, I know he was, had rough times, but mature older David was probably used to eating pretty good.
Yeah.
I bet you would eat well.
Yeah. Good conversation too.
Good conversation. Like, dude, how did you? I don't get it. And you're still a man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
So wild and such a message for
Without
us.
the ego, you know?
Yeah.
Because he was slaying beasts.
Yeah.
You hear me? And there's no ego there.
He was humble.
He gave the glory to God still.
Yeah. And when he did it, he got corrected.
Yeah.
Those times that he started to receive it. But that'd be really hard.
Yeah.
Like if I chopped a giant's head off and saved my people,
Everyone's knowing.
it would be really hard not to post it all over the social media, RJ.
Taking
I'll be holding that
pictures.
giant's head up like, look,
Yeah.
we did it, guys. Everybody's free.
Yeah.
But for your brain, that's true humility, is for your brain not to even go to that place.
Yeah.
Like, look what God has done. You know what I mean? Drop that head on the ground and just start praising God.
Yeah.
You know, some of the most solid people I meet, you can't tell them nothing because they'll be like, oh, all glory to God. Hey, that was a good set. Hey, you know what I mean? That sounded really good. All of that, all glory to God. Praise God.
Yeah.
They don't take it.
You got $1 million in your bank account.
They
Praise
spill it
God.
out right in front of you. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, nope. All right. So recently, what has been your praise and worship song, your go-to?
So my go-to is always New Wine.
I don't know if I know that one.
It's good. It's all about just like God reforming you, making new wine.
Who sings it?
So there's two versions. My wife likes one, and I like the other. I like the Maverick City version.
Oh, Maverick
Chandler
City.
Moore. I love it. But I don't know who her artist is.
Sam's wife is Jackie, by the way. Sorry, I was looking that up on my phone. She is the one that shared her story on our very first episode.
Yes.
Yeah. Just for a little bit of context. So New Wine, Maverick City.
Yeah.
I think mine is Trust in God, maybe Elevation Worship. Took the girls to see Brandon Lake, and he did an acoustic version of a lot of stuff.
Did you get wrecked?
Huh?
Did you get wrecked at that concert?
Dude, I mean, it's so overwhelming. What, 9, 10, 12,000 people just praising God. And I don't know if I've talked about this on here before, but we were I was getting tickets. The girl said, we want to go see Brandon Lake. And I was like, oh, praise God. You know what I mean? They want to go see some worship. And
Did you want to go to the Eras tour?
no, I mean, I don't know if they did or not, but I just straight rebuke that. So as I'm sitting there getting tickets, they're like, the seats are disappearing. So I'm like, just whatever.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know what I was getting. And so there's the floor. And a couple times I went to see him, like there's floor seating and then there's like the arena seating. And so we got like we were on the second row up, right in the middle, but we were across the, where the, it was the Coliseum. So if you've been there, it's where the Comets play hockey. So it's across the hockey, on the other side of the ice. And so it was like, oh, it was pretty cool. But then this dude changed and did it. And we saw him setting up a stage in front of us. And it was, country looking. And he did a whole entire acoustic set, hour maybe, right in front of us. And I love the acoustic stuff, especially when you can hear, I just think about like heaven with everybody being like,
Thousands
holy,
of people
holy,
singing.
holy. Yeah, and so we had the seats in front of us were empty. And these young teenagers, like, a third of the way through the show, they kind of creep in. They didn't have tickets for these seats. And they're looking around, and one goes down there and sits. He shoots out a text message, and then there's another one. And so they're all in front of us. And I think, like, here's the thing, just about being a follower of Christ is like finding the joy and stuff instead of complaining.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I will not go out to eat with anybody, especially after church, if you're going to complain and not tip. Get out of here with that. You know what I mean? But you could tell, the people behind us seemed a little irritated, but and I was like, that's not their seats, but whatever. And the most beautiful experience happened because these kids, probably 15, 16, one of them probably had a license, and more of their friends come. You know what I mean? And then they just pile, like there's 6 or 7 of them up there at the end of it. And then Brandon Lake comes over and they start freaking out. But here was like what's so cool is we've got to get out of our own way and be like, these kids are like the future. And everybody acts like the church is dead. I don't know if the buildings, but what we see a lot of times is it's not. These kids, he comes over and starts singing and they're praising God, like jumping around like we do, RJ, you know what I mean? And it was like the most beautiful thing. And my daughters are next to me and it's just like watching this other generation. So I got wrecked in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
Just like, gosh, look at these teenagers that could be doing anything tonight. You know what I mean? They could be doing anything and they're praising God, in this building, and they are praising shamelessly.
Yeah.
More shamelessly than the adults, just jumping and having a blast. And it blessed my heart. I was so glad that they were bold enough. Nobody's using the seats. I mean, you know what I mean? So like I was so glad to just get to witness that and seeing my girls praising God and seeing these young people. It really blessed me. I was thinking about it the next day, just like in tears. It's like, this is what we do. Like, you know what I mean? I go all these places and what I wouldn't do for these kids, you know what I mean, have these rough lives and are struggling with so much. I would do anything, you know what I mean? I would give my life for them to experience what those kids experienced, you know what I mean? And it made me, it was emotional because it's like, that's the thing is if you get that, you know what I mean? You don't have to have speakers coming to do assemblies and stuff like that. You know what I mean? They're just out praising God. So that's it wrecked me really good. If you ever have a chance, I mean, I strongly suggest to go check him out. We've seen him a few times, and I have, and that was the girl's first time, and it was just, it's the worship. It doesn't have anything to do with him, but he's really, he's a good singer and stuff, but it's just it's just hearing a crowd of people singing and watching everybody and just so bold, just so boldly jumping for Jesus when there's other things they could be doing,
Yeah. We went to the Lauren Daigle concert and had a very similar experience.
Oh, Lauren Daigle,
When you hear the music cut out and just everyone singing, praising and worshiping together and knowing like, this is a Friday night and these kids could be anywhere else, but they're here praising, they're here worshiping, and making that right next step. We could learn a lot from our youth.
Yeah.
If we just sat down and paid attention, we could learn a lot.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the coolest worship experiences I had was over at the church. And RJ, I bet you were there, but it blacked out. All the power and everything went out, and everybody kept singing. And they did not. It wasn't for like 2 or 3 minutes. It felt like an extended period of time, and it felt like, gosh, there's no place else I'd rather be right now than in this moment because it didn't stop. You know what I mean? It was such a cool experience. I love the praise and worship atmosphere, and I think the people that know me really well know that.
Yeah.
I love hearing people's testimonies. I love I love hearing singing. I can't sing real well, but I'll still, I just love singing to God. And, so.
Sounds like we might need to bring Friday nights back then.
They're talking about it. We brought it up. I have to get RJ on the keyboard for some of them.
There you go.
What you got going on for the next year of Fridays, RJ?
Yeah, let's make this commitment now.
The Friday night fire services we used to do, and they started off as like a testimony service that Brian Blevins started and has done a phenomenal job, like starting and running several of them. And he kind of just wanted to facilitate starting it up. And it went from testimonies to worshiping, and it was for about 3 years, we operated through the pandemic, really boldly. And it was just a cool experience to watch people start to, raise their hands and ask for prayer and hit the altar. It didn't happen overnight, but just a beautiful environment that God created there. And it was all Him. We really tried to stay out of God's way and just let Him operate.
Those were just in the scheme of things. Those were some hard years, and to know that you could go somewhere. That's actually where like me and Jackie had our first date. But to know that you could go somewhere and have a little bit of hope for an hour and a half,
Yeah.
2 hours.
Yeah.
Like that changed a lot of lives. That building changed a lot of lives. That service changed a lot of lives.
Yeah, we operate in hope.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. If we do a Patreon ever, those Friday night services will end up being on there or something if we can do it.
Yeah.
Well, Sam, I appreciate you coming in.
Appreciate you having me.
It's really good talking to you. I talk to you all the time, but it was really good to finally get you in. Is there anything that you need to plug or let people know that's going on? I'm trying to think, and I don't know. I don't know of anything that we have going on, but do you have anything?
No, not off the top of my head. Just know if you're struggling, if you have someone that's struggling, hit us up on Bare Knuckle. Message myself personally, John personally, any member of my team personally. You know, we'd love to help. We're here to support you. That's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, we want to thank you for coming in. Go check out Bare Knuckle Recovery. Please, if you enjoyed this, go subscribe on YouTube, Escaping the Chains Podcast. Follow us on Apple Podcast. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Spotify, Escaping the Chains Podcast. And you can also do a review and comment on the podcast. And that stuff's really helpful. So if you would do that, we want to give a shout out to Brian Blevins, Andy Egler, and a bunch of. There's been a lot of people that have helped put this together. So we never want to forget that. And there's a team of people beyond that. And like I said at the beginning, Delivered Media can come to your church and set up your audio, video, help you get into the new era, because some of y'all you're dragging your feet. You're dragging your feet. We see it on your lives. If you need any help with that, you can contact Delivered Media. They have a Facebook page. Does that work, RJ? You can reach out to Delivered Media on their Facebook page. They literally do our lighting, our video, our audio, our editing, and they are the heartbeat of this podcast. If you want to start a podcast and you're trying to figure out how to make it happen, RJ and Delivered Media are your people.
Listen, those organs in your church are beautiful, but who's going to play them in 10 years?
Yeah, they are. They sound cool.
Yeah.
But you gotta hit up Delivered Media.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for listening. We love you guys. Reach out if you need help. You've been given some resources. Listen to New Wine by Maverick City, and let us know what you think in the comments. I'm John Humphreys. I'm your host at Escaping the Chains podcast, and it's been such a blessing having Sam in, and thank you so much for listening and supporting us. We love you guys.